Hey, it's Quentin West with Shortcut to Superhost. We help real estate investors start, optimize, or scale their short-term rental business. Today, I'm incredibly excited to join Brian to talk with you guys about the short-term rental industry, what is working for us, and how you can set yourself up to achieve financial freedom through the short-term rental business.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 496. The short-term rental market has created incredible opportunities for investors, but success isn't just about listing a property on Airbnb. It takes strategy, optimization, and resilience to build a thriving business. Quentin West knows this firsthand. After facing financial hardship, he turned to Airbnb and built a short-term rental empire, generating over $100,000 per month. Now, as a leading Airbnb coach and investor, he's helped over 1,000 students across 15 countries achieve financial independence through Airbnb arbitrage, scaling strategies, and cracking the Airbnb algorithm. Today, Quentin is here to share how investors can build, optimize, and scale a profitable short-term rental portfolio, even in tough markets. Quentin, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Quentin. How'd you get started investing in short-term rentals?
So people are typically surprised when I tell them this, but I got in by a total accident. So I didn't go out and decide I was going to create the next side hustle or anything like that. I was actually in between jobs. I went from working in construction to getting my real estate license to eventually be a real estate investor, but I had a lot to learn first. And within the first 3 months of me getting my license, I got into some really hard times to the point where the house that I bought right before I quit my job, I was faced with the decision to either move out and, try to do something else with it to generate money or just give it back to the bank. Because in that time, things were a little bit slower and I owed more on the house than what it was worth. So what I decided to do was put it on Airbnb to kind of float me by and pay some bills until I could get back on my feet. I never really thought I would make money. It's crazy looking back now because, there's so much opportunity, but I live in a town of 25,000 people. It's not a vacation rental market. So probably one of the last places you would ever think would generate cash flow on Airbnb. But the first month it made $1,000 in profit. The second month it made $1,500 in profit. And at the time I was 21 years old and the most money I ever made in a month was $4,000 a month. So now that I could, almost make half of that or a third and work less than a couple hours a week, it kind of became my drug of choice. I obsessed over the Airbnb market after that. And ultimately, I learned about Airbnb arbitrage, where you could rent a property and sublease it on Airbnb. And, I didn't have any money at the time. And all I had was a couple credit cards with a little bit of a balance on them. So what I did was I sent myself an invoice from my company and I paid it with the credit card so that I could then send it to my bank and take it out to write a check for my first month's rent deposit on my first arbitrage property. Because, I couldn't pay the rent with the credit card. I had to get really resourceful. And over the next 12 months of learning about arbitrage, the ins and outs, understanding how to price, how to hire cleaners, and then business credit so I could set up more units, I built a portfolio of 12 units that generated over $14,000 a month in net profit on Airbnb.
Go back to that beginning. You're afraid you weren't going to be able to keep your house, and you put it up on Airbnb. Now, were you putting up the whole house? Were you renting it out by the room? I mean, what exactly were you doing to make that first $1,500 that you made?
So I did the whole house, and that was not my first decision. here I am, 21 years old. I dropped out of college. I quit the job that my parents wanted me to work in, and now I'm moving back in with them after a few months earlier celebrating the quote unquote success of buying my first house. So for a while, I was the black sheep in the family. Let's just put it that way.
And when you talk about arbitrage, for our listeners out there who aren't clear on what you mean, describe that process of arbitraging in Airbnb.
So arbitrage is not an Airbnb specific term. It just means you take one product, you're the middleman, you add a little bit more value and sell it for a higher rate. So you see this a lot with like drop shipping. You find someone in China that can supply you with products. You run the marketing on a product and you sell it for more to other people on Amazon or other websites. Airbnb arbitrage works the same way. You rent a property long-term from a landlord that allows you to then sublease it on Airbnb. So you're furnishing it, you're marketing it on Airbnb, and then you generate all the revenue from Airbnb. You pay the utilities, you pay your cleaners, and you pay your rent to your landlord, and you pocket the rest.
Now, is that how you pretty much built your portfolio, is through arbitrage, or have you also been acquiring properties?
I bought a couple with creative finance along the way, but we still only own 3 properties. The rest are arbitrage, or we've even gotten into what we now call fractional hosting, which is a step off of property management. So we're never handling the owner's funds. We're only marketing the property and handling their pricing and fixing the property and optimizing it within the algorithm. So all the fun stuff that the average host doesn't understand, that's a conversation for another time, but we're helping people with that new model as well.
You talked about how when you put your house up on the market on Airbnb, you're living in a 25,000 person town. So it's not a vacation type area that people would want to stay there. So who was staying at your house? I mean, what type of person was coming into your house and staying there when they weren't really there on vacation?
My first guest ever was a corporation that was setting up a pet cremation facility in the area. So they rented it for a couple of weeks while they were in the area working. And then since then, we filled our properties with people coming to weddings, family just coming to visit, other members of their family, people traveling to the area. We hosted an entire electrical construction company for several months in multiple properties. They were replacing all of the signage on the BB&T banks in our area. So not many vacation travelers. We're not in a beach market. The mountains are a couple hours away. So we're really having to target like through traffic is what I would describe it as. People that are coming and, stopping midway through to their destination, or they're coming to visit family or corporate travelers.
Do you think that what you're experiencing applies to anywhere in the country, that if you have a property that can be put on Airbnb, there will be a market for it?
I wouldn't say anywhere in the US. There's certainly markets that, they don't have through traffic, especially on like the outer edges of the US that are not like vacation areas. There's no reason for people to travel through the area. But the way that we've now began to describing areas like mine are using the golden triangle method. So with the golden triangle method, you're finding a location in the center of a triangle that is 30 minutes from 3 separate tourist destinations or attractions. So these could be like international airports, they could be amusement parks, they could be national parks, forests, things like that have a lot of tourist travel every year. In our situation, we're right in between Charlotte, we're right in between Raleigh, we're like an hour and a half from each. We have an airport nearby. We have a lot of wedding venues. I mean, there's probably 50 wedding venues in our area. So we get a lot of people traveling and wanting to use our house for like the bridesmaids or the groomsmen and staying in our house for a couple of days during the weekend for the wedding. So that's, where we found success, at least.
Where are you located? Where are you? It sounds like you're in North Carolina.
We're in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
So you stumbled into this, but it sounds like you've really you've turned this into your business. This is your livelihood, and you figured out the levers to pull to really be successful. So can you take our listeners through that process? Like As you were figuring this out, you discovered arbitrage, but then it sounds like you discovered, okay, what's the marketing angle? What are the algorithms that I need to hit? Share some of that with us, please.
To give you a real highlight reel of how important optimization is, I think it's important to talk about how I, again, lucked up, if we can call it that, and figured it out myself. So pretty much I wouldn't say I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I'm the move fast and break things type. And that's exactly how I figured this out. I was continuing to grow my portfolio. We were around 39 units at the time. And I set up 11 units at once, 7 in Arizona and 4 in Texas. These were, Dallas, Texas, Phoenix area, Arizona markets. Everyone was telling me how great they were, how much money they were making. And so I decided to really just go all in, set up all these units at once. And within 5 months of trying to get them to work and trying to make money and flying back and forth, I had pretty much drained myself and my company to the point of where most people would file bankruptcy. I woke up with negative $2,500 in my bank account. I owed $67,000 in rent that was due that day. I owed $150,000 to American Express, where I put other credit and everything else I could for my rent on a credit card to try to figure things out. And all of this was due to not understanding how to compete at a high level. What I didn't realize is, even in my current market, I was underperforming. I could have made a lot more money, but I was just, letting the pricing do whatever it did. I wasn't really doing anything with marketing. Half my properties didn't even have professional photos because I was too cheap to get them taken. And so I didn't realize how much I was leaving on the table. And in the process of trying to get those out-of-state properties to work, I left my in-state properties to a manager who I found out months later was sitting at the house watching Netflix, letting my properties go to crap. So our reviews went down. Some of our properties got suspended from the platform. And so here I was, with all these properties spiraling down and had no idea how to fix it. And so after a couple months of pretty much waking up at lunchtime because I was so depressed, imagine having 47 properties, each with a rent, a power bill, water, some gas, internet. All of those creditors were calling me every day. I was getting over 100 phone calls a day from people asking me where the money was. And I had this negative bank account balance. I had all this debt. I had no ability to pay them. And so what I decided to do was ultimately take out some loans from friends and family, what banks were left that would loan me money before my credit got tanked. And I went and hired mentors to teach me how to fix it. And what I learned was, if I had the foundation on the front end to help me become successful and optimize my units, I would have never seen the hardship that I had on the back end. And so over the course of a year, I really dialed in my understanding on pricing. I got our properties optimized. I marketed them better. And over the course of a year, I dug out of that hole. I paid everyone off. I got up to date on our utilities. And, that huge hole, I tell people all the time, if I can dig out of a hole like that, where I literally, people were in my circle saying, hey, you might just want to file bankruptcy. But if I can dig out of that, then what can you do? And how fast can you scale your portfolio if you do things right from the beginning? So what's important, to answer your question now that I've gone on a rant, what is important is understanding what the algorithm deems as important, how you can rank higher, and how you can use these marketing tactics to your advantage. So some of the biggest areas that we see people making a mistake in is what we call listing and praying and guessing on your pricing. So listing and praying is just like it sounds. You're taking a few photos, you're writing a short description, you may even be throwing something in the chat GPT, and then you put it on the platform and pray that it gets booked. You haven't done what the necessary research on how much revenue you should actually be making. You have no strategy around listing your photos. There's a correct way, believe it or not, to list photos. And you're guessing on your pricing, meaning you're just going with the flow. You're looking at what your neighbors may be doing. You're, dropping the price if things aren't booking, and you're just blindly doing that. And what people don't realize is that if you're not comparing your pricing to other high performers, then you're just comparing yourself to the average and you're going to continue to underperform. So those are the two areas where we see people making the biggest mistakes. There's a lot of other finer details, but that's an hour-long conversation in itself.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. Give us some tips on where you should price yourself then. I mean, if you do have an average place and you're not, the exclusive resort type place down the street, how do you set your pricing accordingly?
First, you want to find 5 to 10 properties that you know are top performers. So one of the best tools that we use for this is AirDNA. You can go in, set your criteria, and it will show you the properties that are performing at the best in your market. Then now that we have that data, we want to price ourselves according to how many days in advance people are booking currently. So as a general rule of thumb, and this can shift a little bit depending on market, we want to be slightly cheaper than our competition 0 to 14 days away. So 14 days out, we want to be slightly cheaper than our competition. 14 to 21 days out, we want to be very competitive. We want to be right in line with what the competition is charging. And 21 days and further out, we want to be 5 to 10% higher. That way, if we get booked further out, we're able to charge a premium rate when we have a much higher, much larger pool of guests that are looking at our property.
You're looking at AirDNA, and that is giving you the data that will help you set your pricing, or do you have to go and also look at what else is on Airbnb?
You've got to dig a little bit deeper. They will give you an average nightly rate, but that can also fluctuate a lot depending on season. So what we typically will do is we'll go in for like the next 90 days on each of our competitors, and we'll look at their average nightly rate for each month. That way we can set our weekday pricing, our weekend pricing, and we can be very competitive over the next 90 days. And that will give us a general idea of how to price the rest of the year.
Let's say you do that. You set your pricing and you get it right, but you're still not getting the bookings you want to get. What's the next thing you look at?
So we would look at data insights. So Airbnb will not show you these unless you turn them on. So you can type in on Google Airbnb Pro Host Tools, and it will take you to an account setting on your back end where you can turn them on. And then the up in the top right corner under menu, you click on menu on Airbnb and you'll see insights. So you click on your insights, and there's 3 major metrics that we're looking at. The first one is first page search impression rate. This is the percentage of time that you're showing up on the front page. We want to see that that's typically 50% or higher. The next one is search to listing conversion. This is the percentage of people that click on your listing after they see you in search. We want this to be at least 12% or higher. And then the last one is listing to booking conversion. This is the percentage of people that click on your listing that actually book your property. We want to see a 2% or higher listing to booking conversion. Now, if any of these are low, you're going to make different decisions based on what you currently see on your property. So first one, first page search impressions. This is typically always going to be the last one that moves up or down depending on what your property is doing. Because you have to think about your first page search impressions as like a trust score with the platform. Airbnb is going to give you more or less first page search impressions by what you've historically done. So if we don't improve our conversion rate, it makes no sense for them to give you more first page search impressions. So that one will change last typically. The next one, search to listing conversion. Typically what will move the needle there is either what you're listing in your title. So what amenities you're showing, what's catching people's eye, your first photo, if it's engaging enough to get them to click, or your price. Ultimately, if you're much higher than the competition, they're not going to click on your listing anyway. Listing to booking conversion, if that is low, then it's typically a lot of the same, but it goes more into amenities. Because if they've clicked on your listing, that means that in general, you're around the price that they're willing to pay. Your photos have caught their attention enough for them to spend their time now looking through the rest of your listing, and your title is engaging. So at that point, maybe we want to bring up our amenities further up in our description or our listing photos. That way they can make a decision faster. A big mistake that we see people making is they have all these great amenities, but they've trusted Airbnb to arrange their photos the way that they now do it. And from a marketing standpoint, it really makes no sense the way that they have organized people's photos. From an organizational standpoint, makes a ton of sense. But if we relate this to like a magazine, for instance, where you're placed in that magazine is going to cost you a different price depending on where you want to be. First page, the cover page is obviously going to cost the most because more people are going to see that. Second, third page is going to be a little bit cheaper. And then as you get further and further into the magazine, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper because they know that less eyes are going to make it to that point. Your photo reel should be treated in the same way. What you want people to see the fastest and what will actually help them make a booking decision, you want to put that further up in your photo reel. That way, they're not having to scroll through 30 photos before they see that you have a pool or a hot tub.
You'd want to lead with the pool or hot tub. You want to take the most effective photos that you have, the best marketing photos, and put those right at the top.
Yeah, and some of it's seasonal. So like if you have a pool, but it gets really cold during the winter, obviously you don't want your first photo to be a pool because people are not looking for a pool at that time, and it may even turn people off. And so we want to also keep in mind what the potential traveler is looking for during each different season and what may make them book faster during that time period.
What are those things? I mean, is it a good kitchen, a good bathroom? I mean, if you just have an average house or property without a pool or hot tub or great views, then where do you start? What do you show first?
So it changes from market to market. So I'll give you a vague answer because it is very different. In some markets, everybody has a hot tub. So it's not so important because they know that, if they book anywhere in the area, like Sevierville, Tennessee, that's a really good market. Broken Bow, Oklahoma, it's in general, everyone's going to have a hot tub. If you don't, then you're never going to be able to compete in those markets. So we want to show things that make our property stand out. So with like a basic house, which is honestly, most of our properties are very basic. We want to highlight the location, how close it is to nearby amenities. So like one of our best performers, it's 2 minutes from downtown. So they can walk to restaurants and shopping and things like that in the area. We may want to highlight the kitchen if it does have a really nice kitchen. We may want to highlight the backyard if we are getting a lot of families or people that have pets. That way they can see right off that, it's got a great backyard for our kids to enjoy. It's fenced so we can bring our dog. So from market to market, it's going to change, but I would say, look at your historic guest history. Who are you hosting more often than not? And then let's try to tailor our marketing towards that specific audience.
You've just given a really great rundown of ways to improve your standing on Airbnb. Are there other algorithms and things you look at beyond those items that can really make a difference as well?
Those are the biggest ones, honestly. Each platform is going to have a little bit different of an algorithm, but we want to think about the platforms from a foundational standpoint. They're based on marketing and human psychology principles. What is going to get someone to make a buying decision? And they want to make the most money possible. So they're going to promote properties that have historically converted at a higher rate. So if you want to get more views, you want to get more bookings, you want to show up on the front page more often, all you have to do is get people to book at a higher rate. So if you're looking at your conversion rates and they're moving up, you will, as a byproduct, get shown to more people because you're building more trust on the platforms. Even with like Google SEO, you have to build that reputation over time. If you're getting more clicks, you're getting more engagement, you're paying them more money, they're going to promote more traffic to your site because of it.
One of the things I always look at when I book on Airbnb is the superhost. I want the place I stay to have a superhost status. Talk about the importance of that.
It is very important, but it's not the biggest thing I would focus on. We have so many people that come to us and they're already superhost, yet they're struggling to pay their bills and they shouldn't be. So, one of the biggest, matter of fact, in sales, when we're talking to someone about coming to work with us as a client, they said, well, your company's shortcut to superhost. We're already a superhost. And our response is often, well, congratulations. That's a great first step, but it means nothing when it comes to revenue. And it's true because all you have to do to become a superhost is hit a couple key points, which is maintaining a 90% or higher response rate, having a 4.8 rating or above, hosting over 100 nights out of the year, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. But if you can hit those metrics, which almost anyone can with one single property, as you add more, it gets harder. Almost anyone can hit that, and then you're a superhost. But even if you only hit those metrics, you're still performing at the average or below as far as revenue. So we've got to really look at our optimization, how we're marketing our property, how we're pricing so that we can fill in the rest of that vacancy.
Tell our listeners how they can find out more about you, your company, and what you have to offer. And it sounds like you offer or your company is geared toward helping other hosts maximize their revenue. So share a little bit of info on that, please.
So we help people start, optimize, or scale their short-term rental business. So whether you just heard about Airbnb on Brian's podcast and you decide you want more information or you want to get started, or you've got a 50 unit or higher portfolio, we help you guys and everyone in between. So we've helped people start from target and quit their job over a 6-month period with Airbnb Arbitrage. And we've helped people continue to generate generational wealth by doing cost segregation studies and tax prep and even incorporating virtual assistants and building business credit. So if you want to be in this industry, we're definitely a great resource. Go to my Instagram at Q Deals Homes or contact us on our website at shortcutttosuperhost.com.
Quentin, what's your favorite hack or app?
I'm really into AI now. AI saves me so much time. So 2 apps. One is, of course, ChatGPT, but I also create a lot of presentations, both for my team and for our clients. I do 2 weekly calls coaching every week with my clients. So I use a site called gamma.app. And it's an AI software where you can plug in either a simple prompt or information that you type up or even from a website, and it will create a slideshow for you that requires little to no editing. So when I'm teaching on Airbnb arbitrage and I have, in mind some major points that I want to hit, but I want it to fill in the gaps, it'll do all that for me. If I want to teach a class on business credit, it will do everything for me. All I need to do is find the credit cards that I want to highlight and some of their data points, and it'll do everything else for me. So those are 2 of my favorite apps for sure.
That was gamma.app?
Gamma.app, GAMMA.app.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show today, Quentin, and talking about your experience with Airbnb and arbitrage. And really learning, and sharing your secrets on how you kind of work the Airbnb system to maximize your bookings, maximize your revenue. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.